Welcome, welcome, welcome to the first episode of Glow Talk. Yay! Woo! By now, anyone out there that watches the Glow Up Girl podcast, I dance like about almost anything and I celebrate like all things. So, this is another way for us to connect out there in the world to all of you ladies and you fellas who may be joining us to talk to some inspiring guests who are going to touch on some very relevant topics. And I'm so glad today that Sherrie Tennessee is joining me today. And we're going to talk about how to stop playing small and elevate to the next level. And so this was birthed from a conversation that we had like months ago, I think, that we started.
February, maybe February. It's a bit of a blur now.
But we were talking about it and we wanted to come together and have a discussion because it is something very relevant to women and roadblocks that we as women sort of face in like thumbing ourselves down. I'll just use that phrase, and sort of like getting in our own way sometimes and not being able to elevate. So we're going to just have a discussion today. So Sherrie, why don't you tell everybody out there about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sherrie Tennessee. Yes, that really is my name, and I am not from Tennessee. Ancestors. I have a pretty interesting background. I actually have a BS in biology from the beautiful Norfolk State University. Behold. And I used that. I was an animal keeper at the zoo, and I took care of hippos. I got to work at the illustrious Johns Hopkins University doing cancer research. And it was in the midst of that I got introduced to the world of spa and massage therapy, kept the day jobs and kept working at wonderful research institutions until about 2005. And I just kind of fell out of love with what I was doing day to day and really wanted to step more into the massage and the spa aspect. Had the opportunity to open a spa in 2006 in Baltimore, Maryland, best spa, best massage therapist, all these great accolades. And then comes the Great Recession. And we ended up closing our business, my business partner and I, back in 2009. And when we talk about playing small, I really had identified who I was, all that I was with the spa. And when it closed, I felt like a failure. And I did. I really closed myself off to opportunities. And I started just thinking small and coming from a place of fear and not enough. And it has taken me almost 12 years to get through that with some great opportunities. So we relocated to Miami. I got my MBA. I had a great opportunity to work at some phenomenal institutions, including Johnson and Wales. And I remember in the interview, I was going for a spa management instructor. And he said, well, what happened to your spa? And I was like, well, it closed. Again, playing small. And luckily, he was phenomenal. He understood. He said, what? I'd rather hire someone who opened and closed a spa and understand what that looks like and has dealt with that than to have never. And that really lifted a full burden off of my shoulder of the shame I had been carrying about it closing. And as I really just embraced myself, understood my business knowledge, what I brought to the table, more great opportunities fell into my lap. And I had to think bigger. My mentor works very closely with Sandals Resorts International. And I got the call to go relocate to Jamaica and be their director of education for all of Red Lane Spas. And that required some big thinking. That required me not listening to anyone else but the God-guided voice inside of my head, or whatever you want to call it, self-power, universe, higher self, whatever that was. It was like, this is a wonderful opportunity. I call it a Godfather opportunity, right? It's one you couldn't refuse.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful experience to live internationally, to travel around the Caribbean, the professional connections that I made, and showing up in a room like I belonged there. And when I was in my 20s, I never would have thought that. It was like, I'm going to sit in the corner, I'm going to be quiet, and I'm just going to take whatever bones are thrown my way. Now it's like, nah, I know what I bring to the table. You're going to pay me for it, and you're going to give it to me. So I came back from Sandals. I was director of recruiting and training for a major hospitality organization. Ended up being the director in spa for a 5-star Forbes location. Stressed me out. Ended up in the ER from stress. Said, let me really focus on wellness, taking care of myself, and walked back into education again. So, I mean, I have a very interesting background, and all the while I do consulting and wellness coaching and wellness business coaching under the umbrella of Spa SOS. So I've been where a lot of people are, where they have had things happen that had them play small, and being able to get out of sometimes that self-designed box.
Yes. Yes. I think that I first of all, very, very impressive background. I mean, and just a very well-rounded, background, I would say. And it's so awesome to, have someone like you be able to pour into everyone out there. I think that's awesome. And I appreciate your honesty and transparency about what you've gone through in your life. So that is much appreciated. But I love what you just said about, putting yourself in a box, because that is, as we sort of go into some of those roadblocks, that's definitely something that, women do a lot, to put yourself in this place to where it's like, well, I can just do this one thing, or because people, I think one example that I'll give that I see a lot is that especially in corporate America, a lot of times women are like well versed and can do so many things, right? Like we can multitask like nobody's business, and we can handle multiple things. But because sometimes in a corporate environment, they want you to fit in this box that they have, designed for you. Well, we've got this box for you. We want you to climb inside and close the lid and just
and stay there for the next 20 years.
Yes, just be this way for the next, like, forever, right?
Right.
So I think that I see that happening a lot in the corporate space. And so let's sort of talk through, some things that women can, proactively do, especially as it relates, say, to your career, right? And and like some ways that you can, say, let me just get my legs out the box. I'm kicking. I'm not gonna climb out and just kick out the box.
We're gonna peep our head over and see. And I mean, the perfect example of that, sorry, my dog is sitting right here and is the neediest dog you've ever seen.
Oh, I love it.
Example of that is when I was leaving the last pharmaceutical company, and I loved my boss. He definitely was someone who fed into me. He was like, you need to learn Excel. Like, he was one of those dream leaders who really pours into his team. And when I told him I was leaving, he was like, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. You're going to regret this, right? And that was April. And what really caused the whole epiphany is I had gotten into a fender bender on 295 outside of DC, going right into the city. So if you know that place, that's exactly where it was. It was rainy. And it wasn't, I had just bought the car. I didn't have a scratch on the car, and I was going down to see my parents, and I had another 2 hours to drive. And I said, well, what if I had died doing something I didn't love anymore? And it was like, okay, it's time to make this leap, right? And I mean, I had been working in the industry. I had been building up clients. So it wasn't just this Tuesday morning, I woke up, I'm gonna go do this, and I hadn't had any experience. I was building up to it. And I got back and I said, I'm leaving. I'm giving y'all 3 weeks notice and I'm done. And he was like, this is the mistake. You're going to regret it. And 6 months later, they disbanded the whole department.
Oh, wow.
And so he came to me, he sent me an email. He was like, that was probably the best decision that you ever made, because now the whole department is scrambling to figure out what's next. So I know I said it earlier, but like when you get that voice and it's that ooh, I got chills. When you get those chills, when you feel that calling or like, this is it, follow that. Is there any kind of micro action? You know, we're not saying like implode the house and like,
Yeah,
you know,
plan.
say after what
Have
I've
a plan.
done, but start the research behind it. How
Yeah.
can you do this? How can you fulfill this passion? And does it always have to generate revenue? Maybe not always. Maybe it is just that passion project, but sometimes those passion projects lead to and open other doors that you might not have been thinking
Exactly.
about. So
Yep.
follow that voice.
Yes, that's definitely true. And like you said, don't just blow everything up. Get a plan. Like put a plan in place. I mean, because you are so right. When you know what you're supposed to be doing, it is an amazing feeling, first of all, when you know that it has come from God, you know, and you know what you know, it feels right, and you don't think about the money, right? You don't, you know, for my example, a glow up girl, like, yes, I work a corporate job, so I have an everyday job, but I know what I know, and I know this is the thing that God gave to me to give to others. And do I know exactly how I make money? Not yet. I mean, it's coming. It's coming, but I know that what I'm doing, it matters, and I'm giving back to the world. And that's what's important to me. Like, anybody who knows me, who reads anything, I am an Aquarius. So when I am a true Aquarius, and I am definitely someone that I want to leave the world in a better place than I found it. So that is why I've taken this journey here. And being on this journey, you know, it's been a few years for me, probably 2019, of growth and evolution for myself. And then starting this business last year, right at the time of COVID. It definitely has been a walk and a journey of growth. And for me, and it's like, it has taught me not to put myself in those boxes. It has taught me to have a voice, and to use that voice to not only help myself, but to help other people. And you definitely, I definitely am not thinking small. It's like, I'm only like dreaming like super, super big, like all the time. So I think you just have to, you know, listen to that voice. What a lot of people are like, you know, oh, the intuition. I mean, I'm always like, that's Holy Spirit talking. So I got you, God. I'm doing it. And I'm and I'm moving forward with that. Listen and then plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And beware of the naysayers, because they're coming, and they come in different shapes and different forms and different sizes. And what I will say is they didn't get the message that you got. So, you know, for years I would want to argue with people like, no, this is it. And it's like, okay, like, if that's your thought, that's cool.
Yes.
Good, keep it. I'm gonna keep over here doing what I'm doing, and you keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly.
And I think there is this misconception that everything has to be blasted on social media. Like, if you're launching a business and you're still figuring out, that does not need to be a social media post. Figure it out, map it out, get some clients, and then post it, right? Because you never know who might see it and just be like, are you sure you want to do that? Is that a good idea? It's, you know, it's economic downturn, and they will kill your dreams quicker than you could. So, you know, you don't have to post everything out there. Let some things just kind of build and become reality and get that feeling so that you can be bigger in the world.
Yeah. It's okay to move in silence.
Oh, power people move in silence.
Yeah.
No one knew that Amazon was going to buy MGM for $8.45 billion, but he did it.
Right. Exactly. And just like you said, there are, you know, people that we know that could be naysayers, and, you know, that sort of like come into your space to, I mean, sort of be negative, I would say, maybe in their own sense, disguised as caring, right? Or concern. But with us, there's also that inner critic, or that inner mean girl. Shout out to Susan Crawford, my coach, who talks about that inner mean girl. Let's talk about, because you have a very interesting way of how you deal with your inner mean girl.
My imposter syndrome of, why do you think you can do this, and who are you, and how dare you? And I remember one of the first things that I really dealt with when I was in pharmaceuticals is I had this thing where I was like, I can't make more money than my parents do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real, like, you can, like, my parents raised me, they put a lot of effort into me to be able to surpass them. But I do. So I sit down with my inner critic, my imposter, and I start with thank you, right? Because it's ego, it's imposter, it is there to keep you safe. So it serves a purpose, right? So that you're not going into like this spider filled room and getting eaten alive. But at the same time, it plays to keep you small. It plays to keep you in your comfort zone. So
Mm-hmm.
I sit down with her and I'm like, okay, thank you so much for sharing. Where is this coming from? How can we heal it? And let's come up with a strategy on how we're going to be able to achieve it. Because I mean, for years, I don't seem like it, but I definitely was jump first and look later kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me caught up just a little bit. So now I'm a toe dipper and I'm like, all right, let's dip our toe. Let's have a strategy. Let's have a launch date. Let's kind of stretch it out and really look at all angles of it and not be so kind of irrational. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where my imposter syndrome really came from, because it's like, oh my gosh, she's jumping again, and we haven't even. So now it's like, all right, let's sit down. We all not gonna jump. We're gonna sit in peace. We're gonna talk it out. We're gonna figure it out, and really thinking about, sometimes it's that inner 7-year-old that still needs some more healing. Sometimes it's the shame of having a business that closed and not wanting to talk about business. Which kind of kept me small and not wanting to be in those rooms and having those conversations. And, we connect with our stories and our own experiences. And if I wasn't willing to share those, then I wasn't going to be able to help other people. So we all have that imposter syndrome, that how dare you, who are you to, when you even think about like epigenetics, where I carry the mitochondria of my great great grandmother, right? Like, because it comes down through your cells. And, sometimes our fears are the fears that our ancestors had, and they probably had to have those fears.
Right.
But we don't have to protect ourselves in the same way. And we have the tools and the options to be able to assess and create a strategy and move in that direction, with her still whispering. Like, she doesn't necessarily, I don't put her to bed. She is still kind of there. I'm like, all right, you gonna do this? But not having that voice stop me. And for years in my 20s, well, let me not fully say that, because I was just talking to someone how I went to Jamaica by myself at 26.
You know, she had her moments when she would show up for certain events in your life.
I look back on it now at this age, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, nobody bothered me. It was a wonderful experience, but I'm like, I don't know if that was the wisest move with no cell phone, trying to go call international on the payphone. But that voice is there for a reason, to protect you. It's there to have you analyze and review, but it's not there to stop you. And I think that when you talk about playing small, we hear that voice, we hear that doubt, and self-doubt can kill more dreams than anything else.
Yes.
That voice isn't there to stop. It's just to bring awareness and have you be thorough as you move forward, but not to just put up walls for you. At least in
that's not what it's, that exactly. And I like how you address that, because I think a lot of times when people think about that imposter syndrome or that inner critic or inner mean girl, that it's like just it's self-doubt or negative self-talk, which it can be a little bit of, but I love the way you address it to say, okay, girl, I hear ya. Like, we're in this together and I'm listening to you. Because I think a lot of times it just immediately, when someone gets an idea, oh yeah, like, you are really good at this. You should maybe it can be a business. And then immediately, well, I can't start a business because I just need to work my job and just be happy. That's, I don't know what your voice sounds like. Maybe it sounds like that. Mine is like, girl, now girl, nobody wants to hear it. When I started the Glow Up Girl, the podcast, that's what I heard. Like, I just heard God tell me to do it. And then she was like, girl, don't nobody want to hear you. And then I was like, for real, girl, you think? I was like, you think so, girl? But then I like literally heard God being like, now look, who you gonna listen
I
to?
told you what to do.
Yeah, now I ain't gonna tell Kyra. I'm not gonna tell you again. And I was like, okay, yep, let me get my notebook. I'm gonna start planning now. Like,
I'm telling you, I was on a vision call earlier this week, and I said, for me, I'll get the voice, and then I'll get something outside that will support it and be like, oh, you should do this, or here's an opportunity for that. And what I've learned is like, I got 2 strikes. I don't have 3. Because by the time the third one's gonna come, it's gonna punch me in my nose. So it's like, okay, I heard it twice, that's it. But when you talk about that, like, I think of Rihanna, right? She's worth over $500 million from a makeup line. And she's not like she entered the industry in the 80s. Like, she entered the industry a few years ago when it was very crowded. But this was something on her heart. She had an idea or a concept of really expanding the tones that were out there. And it has made her much closer to a billionaire. And you imagine, like, what if she hadn't done it? What if she had sat on it? And I love history. Now that I'm older, I'm addicted to history, but I think about the telephone. And do you know that there were 3 patents submitted in the same week for the telephone? Because God is giving it to different individuals. And it's like, all right, let's see who's going to move forward with it. So when you sit in that imposter syndrome, you sit in that fear and you stop, there's someone who's moving forward. And let me say this to you, Kyra, as we talk about playing small, because we're like, oh, I need another certification. No, I need another degree. I need this. There are people with less education and less experience doing exactly what you want to do right now. So don't let that be, or I'm too old, or I have too many kids, or whatever those excuses are, that keeps you small.
Yes, please hear that, everyone out there. I mean, you are never too old or too young to do anything. If you have a dream and it's on your heart, like, go for it. Like, do it. Because
there's toe dip, right? Don't scare yourself. Toe dip. Don't feel like me and just diving off the cliff.
You're the toe dipper, and I am like the dive in. Like, at this age, I'm like, I'll just throw it at the wall and see what happens. I mean, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I'll optimize and like change things up and see. But I am more, it's easier for me now to dive in and take risk. They're calculated. So like, I sort of think about the risk that I'm taking. So just everybody, I'll just jump out the side of the building and be like, let's see if I float. But I do like think about it. Like, what do I have to lose? And I think that, I'm like, if I don't try it, then I will never know if it can be a success. So, so that's definitely something I would say. So let's talk about being the nice girl.
And this probably is not the week for me to have that conversation, because I have sent out some emails this week where, I got an email from someone and I was highly offended by the tone, right? And tone is something crazy, like 38% of our communication. And I sat with it for 2 days and I said, I was like, okay, it still bothered me 2 days later. Let me go ahead and speak up on this. And I was professional. And I said, I was really taken aback by, your message and your tone. And I just didn't feel like it was a good representation of the person that I was emailing. And 20 years ago, I never would have sent that email. I just would have sat quietly with it. It would have boiled up under my skin. I would have got some sort of boil or pimple as a result of it, thinking about Louise Hay. But what I will say is, with just confidence, with self-love, comes a voice, and not being afraid to use that voice, not feeling like, oh, I need to be a people pleaser. As I tell my students and my son, I am not Willy Wonka. I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you the truth, because that's what I'm here for. Like, people in the world are going to go, oh, that's so nice, so sweet. And then they never call you back, or you never get the position, or they never give you the feedback, like, maybe you don't come to an interview in a purple suit, right? So like, I am And I've kind of honed it. And I think it really came, I have to credit again massage. When I was becoming a massage therapist, like I went back and I taught anatomy and physiology. And I was like, no, that's not going to work. Like I can tone it down and be sweet with it. But I'm like, what do you remember? And when I think about the teachers that were the most impactful in my life, they were two Black women, and they were rough. And they were tough, and they were honest, and they held you accountable. So when you kiki and oh, that's nice, and you never speak, you lose your voice in so many ways and capacities. So am I pleasant? Absolutely. There's pineapples on my wall. I come from hospitality. I'm gonna be agreeable. I'm gonna be pleasant, but I'm also going to give you that honest feedback of my experience. And you can take what you want and leave the rest, or leave it all, but I'm not going to suffer with it. Now, there are some times that I will pause and say, is this important? Do I need to speak on it? Am I going to be thinking about this in 5 years? And that might be just some random occurrence out in the world. No, maybe not. But if it's my student, if it's my child, if it's my work environment, if it's going to be something that represents me in 5 years, it's still going to hold true. So having that voice, not always feeling like you have to step in the room and be of agreement. You can be that discord. You can be that voice that says, well, maybe can we think about it this way? And I'll tell you what, Kyra, we need more of that in corporate settings, where you wouldn't have to come and do that apology on who thought of that. No one in the room had a voice to say, this might not be a good idea. And sometimes, but what I will also say when you talk about that corporate setting is you can have a voice, but do you have a vote? And that could be a whole other podcast conversation on being in the room and having a voice and having a vote. Use your voice. And if they choose not to listen to it, then that's on them, but you didn't sit with it.
I definitely agree with that. I think it's really, really important, and you don't have to people please, and you know, yes, you can be professional and cordial and have a good positive attitude, but at the same time you need to like stand up for yourself, and you need to have your voice be heard. I mean, I had that exact thing happen to me this week. I mean, it happens on a number of occasions where I have to like say, no, time out, let's time.
There must be a disconnect.
Or, you know, I'm confused. I just like, help me to understand. One of my old managers always was like, so help me to understand. And I was like, wow, okay. So, you know, I had that to happen where, you know, I am, you know, in the cycle of, you know, releasing or launching a product and telling the story. Well, I'm the marketing end of it. And so, you know, as a marketer and the person who is more likely going to be the one, well, what were the results? What happened? What did we get from, you know, doing this campaign? You know, I just, as I was sort of planning through the strategy, I was like, oh, well, I realized that I don't have a real offer, you know, at the end of it. I don't know what I'm going to send these people, whatever. So as I started to think through that, you know, I gathered up the people who I was working with, and I was like, oh, well, can y'all help me? I was like, can you guys help me so that I'm aware of, like, you know, where are we going to send them? What is that offer? Like, what's that going to look like? And so they were like, well, you know, I guess we never really thought about it. And so maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Y'all can have a lot of maybes, but maybe you go back and you get me a firm offer, and then I will do what? Then I will pick up this campaign and I will move forward.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And it was just so funny because in my mind, I was like, am I the only person that sees this as like a problem? You know, wow. So I have to make a joke now at this point, because this is technology. This is like this is I appreciate it, but I'm gonna laugh at myself. I don't know, my camera's just all of a sudden like jumping off. So anybody out there watching, forgive my camera. You at least you have a picture of me there that you So you still have a picture, but I loved it. It went from like my main camera and then it popped to my side, my other laptop screen. And I was like, okay, so cool. But yeah, so it's just being able to like, I say to women, because we know what we know. And that means when you know the right thing to do not just sit back and let someone else like dictate to you when you know you're going down the wrong path. And it's not always these, I will admit for myself, it was not always the easiest thing for me to do. But as I have evolved and come into my own confidence, like I'm like, yeah, no, you're not gonna waste my time with that. That's what we're not gonna do.
So. And I think that really goes back to having your voice and playing small, right? When you're not comfortable to speak up, people will take you for granted. And there's a movie that I absolutely love. It's Ocean's 8, right? And if you have not seen that movie, it's phenomenal. The fashion, the style, the acting. But there's one scene and she's holding up people. They're looking for like a hacker. And she's like, well, what about him? And she's like, I don't want a him. And she's like, you don't want a him? And she's like, no, it's not that I've been with him. She's like, I don't want to, a him is going to be seen and a woman is not. And for once, I want us not to be seen. So, there were decades, centuries where we weren't even allowed in the room. If we were in the room, we were silent, we were invisible. And we're finally starting to get a voice, a vote, and utilizing that, even if it's to ask a question or inquire a little bit more, like take advantage of that, because there's so many women who fought for you to be in that room and to finally be seen and heard and to receive a vote. So that is key, in not playing small and really stepping into the grandness that we're all here for.
Yes. No, I always say, know what your magic is and sprinkle that thing. Everywhere.
But we tend to sprinkle, we tend to sprinkle our fear, we tend to sprinkle our insecurity, we sprinkle our doubt. And it's like, let's sprinkle your power around. That's what people really want. People want to support you. Like, one of the things, and I tell my students, I did professional development, I'm like, people want you to succeed when you get up in an interview or you get up and speak in front of the room. Most people are not against you, they're cheering for you. So, you don't need to go up there and say, oh, I'm afraid or I'm nervous. Well, we know you're nervous, because I would be nervous if I had to go up there with you. But go sprinkle your power. I remember there was a woman who said she tripped over a cord and like rolled and her skirt ended up over top of her head. So I've never worn a skirt speaking since I heard that. But she ended with a joke and she was like, ta-da, this is my Chevy Chase move or something like that. It was like, God, she could have cried and walked off the stage, but she was in that moment, the same way your camera's acting up, like it happens. Like, how do we keep moving forward? Because life does not always go as we might plan it.
Yes, that is so true. I mean, probably about 85% of the time it doesn't. So
it doesn't. What is it? Woman plans and God laughs.
Exactly. So let's see, the last thing I want to touch on is something that I think too is a roadblock that we sometimes experience, is that actual fear of, what if this actually works?
Ooh, fear is
what if I actually win?
I think it really is. And I was just talking to a friend a little while ago, and I said, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And it's this thought of like, when you go to an interview, and I tell people all the time when I'm coaching, whether it's a student or a professional, take the pressure off of yourself. One, practice, because practice makes progression. Two, do not walk into this scenario of, oh my goodness, this is going to change my life, because that puts a lot of pressure on you. And when it comes to the success, it's not like, and I'm guilty of it, Kyra, because I tell my girlfriends, I'm like, oh, that's $1 million idea. And they freeze. And I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but I think I should just say that's a genius idea, or that's great, and not that's $1 million idea. Because when you say that, people get like stuck and like, like, am I worth $1 million? Could this really do that?
Right.
And it kind of pushes them back. So I've stopped saying that to my girlfriends, even though I think they're phenomenal ideas. But we always get this connotation of more money, more problems, and once you're successful, you don't act the same and you change and you do this and you do that. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of Tabitha Brown. She had one last week about being in her lane and not being in her lane. This week, she bought her father a fully paid for a Chevy truck. And it really, like, I started crying because I was like, man, I would love to be able to do that. So, not to say that money solves and success solves all problems, but if you have a concept, an idea that people can benefit from, and you're not going necessarily into it to scam or hurt or with ill intention, but you really are going, as you said, with the intention of how do we make the world a better place, and you are fully compensated for that, that is not a bad thing.
Right.
And American Express does an annual report on women-owned businesses, and it talks about, like, they're huge, they are a contributor to the overall economy, but there is a ceiling, and I don't think it's an external ceiling. Now, some of it is like venture funding and mentors and things like that. But the other piece of it, kind of like that imposter syndrome, is like, well, who am I to own a $500,000 company? Who am I to own a $1 million company? Who am I to own a $1 billion company that's traded on, the stock exchange?
Right.
And I think, kind of like when you leap, like if you put those strategies in place and you're looking forward to being that first millionaire, multimillionaire in your family, not getting caught up in the pressure or what if I don't succeed, but really thinking about how many lives that you can impact. Like you look at like a LeBron James, who, he is this celebrity. He,
Lake show.
He was.
Go Lakers. Sorry.
I didn't even know you were a fan, so that all works out.
A very big fan. So I love that you're talking about him. Yes.
Absolutely. But you look at what he's been able to contribute back to society with the power and the influence that he has. So it plays directly into us wanting to be small and not have this voice and not be seen. And people are always like, well, I just want to be behind the scenes and I don't want to make a whole lot of money. I'll be in front of the camera. I'll be behind the camera. I'll be in the camera. But I know the impact that I want to have and the money that comes from that and the charities and the ideas and the nonprofits that I want to start and that I can contribute to. So like playing small is not a good example for your children. It's not a good example for your siblings. It's not a good example for anyone that you touch. Really just thinking about that and how do you step fully into it. And it could be micro steps, like just what little actions can you take, but think about the impact that ultimately you can have. And that will be much more powerful than sitting in the corner and being small and not serving the purpose that God has put on each and every one of our hearts. So that's my remedy.
I like that. I like that a lot. I love that. I mean, well said. So on that note, I mean, hey, here we are.
But I will say one thing, and you said it earlier, like when there's been so many studies on this, when you're on your deathbed, it's never about, I wish I hadn't taken that trip. It's always the things that you hadn't done. And what if you had tried this? And what if you had just put a little bit more effort into that? That's what you're thinking about at the end, is the regrets of what you didn't do, not what you did. And let me say this as someone who had their business fail. Even if you go out there, you leap with both feet, you do it, you swim and you sink, and the business fails, that does not make you a failure, because you've done more than probably 90% of the people out there. Like when I say I have 3 books, everybody's like, oh my God, I want to write a book. How do you write a book? Sit down and write it. Like everybody has a book within them. Just do it. And my thing is, I'm not a big fan of regret. Like I'm going to learn from the lesson. I'm going to grow from the lesson, but I don't want to be 125. That's what I'm claiming on my deathbed. Like, oh, I wish I had. It's like, wasn't that so much fun? Remember we did this, remember we did that. And so that's what I would impart on you, is when you look back on your life, the thing that usually stands out for people are the things that they didn't do, the chances that they didn't try, the godsends and the downloads that they didn't follow. And that will break your heart more than anything else. And that alone should keep you from playing small.
Yes. Thank
That's
you.
my closing statement.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, before we go, will you please let the audience out there know how they can find you online, how they can follow you and connect to you?
Absolutely. I'm not gonna say I live on Instagram, but I do like Instagram. So that is definitely the best place to reach me. My tag is the Spa SOS, so THESPASOS. I'm also on Facebook at the Spa SOS as well. You can DM me, and then I also have my website, which is Spa SOS, for more information and insight and encouragement.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Sherrie, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. And even though it took us a long time to get here, I think it's the right time. It's the perfect time to have it in this moment when we are. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us on this a new wave of how, conversation, Glow Talk. You can also, as always, go and listen to the podcast, Glow Up Girl Podcast, on any podcast platform. You can watch us on YouTube as well. But you can also find us back here on June 4th. That's next Friday. Yes, next Friday. You'll find us back on IG Live for another episode of Glow Talk. So everyone take care. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you soon.
All right, Kyra, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.
Awesome.